In a related development, US President Donald Trump has called Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin crazy for his attacks on Ukrainian cities and warned that any attempt at a total takeover of Ukraine would lead to the downfall of Russia. Trump's comments come after a record number of Russian drones killed at least 13 people across Ukraine, despite a prisoner exchange and a US push for a truce. Trump has also criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and accused him of doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. This comes after Trump told reporters that he was not happy with Putin over the latest Russian offensive. Meanwhile, European allies and even some in his own Republican Party have called for increased pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire. The US president has reportedly avoided issuing ultimatums to Russia, instead threatening to walk away from negotiations if both sides cannot agree to a ceasefire. However, on Sunday, Trump said he was absolutely considering increasing US sanctions on Russia in response to the latest violence. We are now joined by Dr. Pansara Amarasinghe from Koltawala Defence University, Colombo, Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Dr. Amarasinghe, for joining us on the programme. This comes amid diplomacy and violence that continues to happen, but there seems to be limited movement, Amarasinghe. How do you make of the current developments in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the US stance? Can I get your current views on the current developments?
I think by all means, the current development seems to be quite ironic. As you precisely pointed out, here we come across a situation wherein the violence and the diplomacy move hand in hand. So we had the biggest prisoner swap after 2022, Russia's full-scale invasion last week. In this prisoner swap, I think more than 320 prisoners are being exchanged, and there is a huge discussion going on regarding the situation of the Ukrainian prisoners under the Russian detention. There have been several criticisms about the way how they were treated under the Russian detention, saying that the way they were treated were completely a blatant violation of the international humanitarian law standard. But having said that, if I look at the large-scale intensifying Russian offensive on Sunday by using 298 drones to attack several cities in Ukraine, which gives a clear indication that Russian strategy seems to be quite intensified amidst the diplomacy, amidst the intervention coming from President Trump. Because Putin clearly knows that the Russians have Russia can somehow deal with the United States given the closer rapport existing between President Putin and Donald Trump. So Russia doesn't care anything about the opposition, the pressure coming from Europe, because Putin clearly sees Europe as a debilitated, quite a weaker force. So that is why Russia takes stances in intensifying the drone attacks, attacking the several Ukrainian cities. And also we should not forget the fact that at the moment Russian offensive, the land operation has been completely weakened because their level of moving ahead has been slowed down by the formidable Ukrainian defensive. So at the moment, Russia clearly knows if they intensify the drone attacks over the Ukrainian cities only, they can at least convince the Russian public that the victory would be a certain thing. So this is my take about the current development about the Russian offensive since last evening.
Dr. Amarasinghe, when it comes to Russia, Donald Trump seems to be all bark and no bite in regards to Vladimir Putin keeps stepping up these attacks. We've seen him kill 13 yesterday. There was that attack in Sumy a couple of weeks back, which killed 34. When Donald Trump had his argument with Zelensky in the White House, he paused military aid, he paused military intelligence sharing. What is your take on the two different outlooks that Donald Trump has on both Russia and with Ukraine?
Trump has a cynical attitude towards Ukraine from the very beginning. If you have noted the way how he negotiated with Zelensky when Zelensky was invited to White House, it was quite offensive. And the Ukrainian expectations, which they were having under Biden, seems to have been completely shattered since the day Trump stepped into the Oval Office. Because for Trump, this war is an additional burden for the American economy. Trump is a nationalist by all means, and he doesn't want to involve in someone else's war. So at the same time, we must understand that the Trump expects Putin would somehow abide by the discussion that they were having on Monday. There was a telephone conversation between the leaders from Russia and the United States on Monday, but within few days after that, Putin completely stunned the West by launching this offensive. So that led Trump to call him describe as a completely a crazy person. But again, if you look at the whole scenario from a vantage point of view, we need to understand that under President Trump, Ukrainians are not going to get any additional favor from Washington. So they need to completely rely on Europe. So as long as they rely on Europe, they can be safe. But at the same time, we must not forget the fact that at the moment, the Russian offensive is planning to establish a buffer zone within Ukraine. So this is what actually indicated by Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairperson to the Russian Security Council. He clearly stated that as long as Europe continues to support Ukraine, they somehow need to make a buffer zone geographically encompassing the Ukrainian territory to uphold the protection for the Russian Federation.
Dr. Amarasinghe, obviously no one can really read Donald Trump's mind or what he's going to do next. But in reference to this, he says, what the hell happened to him in reference to Putin's actions. What do you think he's thinking about here? I mean, we've seen repeated Russian strikes on Ukraine, killing civilians on multiple occasions. I spoke about that Sumy strike where it killed 34 civilians recently. How unusual is this language in the context of US and Russia relations?
Well, this is a typical macho type behavior coming from Donald Trump. I mean, we are completely accustomed to the statement coming from the American president for past few months since he stepped into the White House. And here comes a man who promised to end the war in 24 hours, but it's been nearly 6 months, right? Still, the war is going on. And in my point of view, I think, as you clearly pointed out, no one can predict what Donald Trump thinks. But Trump thinks and Trump calculates he can make a deal with Putin. But at the same time, if Trump thinks in that manner, he's going to make another detrimental mistake as President George W. Bush made in 2000. When Bush met Putin for the first time, he simply said, I looked at him in the eye and I recognized him to be a very honest man. So that's how Putin took the West for a ride. If President Trump thinks that he can somehow make a deal with Putin by manipulating him, by using all kind of informal negotiation with the Russian leader, which is going to be a fatal mistake.
Dr. Pansara Amarasinghe, thank you very much for your insight on the program. We now move over